There's a difference between peace and liberation, is there not? You can have injustice and have peace. Isn't that correct? Have peace and be enslaved.
Yes.
So peace isn't the answer.
No.
Liberation is the answer. Liberation.
INN News. First story tonight, I will be very transparent. I don't know a lot about. Well, in part because I'm choosing to step away more from the news and politics in my regular life, at least at this point, just to keep me sane.
I've been trying to keep up with this, though, so we should be good.
That being said, though, I should know more about this, given that this is the region of my ancestors, so to speak. But as I said, DJ Joe Nice is planning to come. We need to figure out a time when he's not traveling to actually sit down with him to schedule it. But he does want to talk about this, and he's more well-versed on this than me. So hopefully this can serve as a prelude to what he will probably more likely will expand upon once he's here. So hopefully we try and secure him down before the end of the year. But this story is from Truthout, written by Michael Fox, where he reports Caribbean leaders call for unified land American resistance to U.S. attacks. The U.S. has now struck 18 vessels and killed 70 people in its ongoing onslaught in the Caribbean and Pacific. So Michael...
Nice of Michael J. Fox to write things while he lives a very difficult disabled existence with the old Parkinson's and whatnot.
But Michael Fox writes, the tiny island nation of Barbados, with a population roughly the size of Anchorage, Nebraska, or Anchorage, Alaska, or Lincoln, Nebraska, might not be the country one would first imagine taking the lead to stand up to U.S. military actions and ambitions in the region. But as the Trump administration continues to attack boats, first in the Caribbean Sea and now in the Pacific, leaders in Barbados have been vocal. As a small state, we have invested tremendous time and energy and effort in establishing and maintaining our region as a zone of peace, Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley said at a conference in late October. Peace is critical to all that we do in this region, and now that peace is being threatened, we have to speak up. Motley called on other leaders in the region to denounce the U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean and the U.S. strikes on more than 18 vessels that, as of November 7th, had killed at least 70 people in the Caribbean and Pacific. U.S. officials say its boats are carrying dangerous drugs like fentanyl and cocaine to the United States. They say the people killed on these boats are drug traffickers. They provide no evidence for these claims, and in fact, administration officials have also admitted that the military doesn't identify individuals on the boats before hitting them.
Right.
Ben Saul, the UN Special Rapporteur for the Protection of Human Rights while countering terrorism, has called the attacks a crime against humanity.
Yeah.
Family members of the victims who have been found say the people on the boats were just fishermen. They accuse the United States of flouting international law to push its military agenda in Latin America and the Caribbean. I believe that the time has come for us, therefore, to be able to ensure that we do not accept that any entity has the right to engage in extrajudicial killings of persons that they suspect of being involved in criminal activities, said Motley. We equally do not accept that any nation of our region or the Greater Caribbean should be the subject of an imposition upon them of any unilateral expression of force and violence by any third party or nation. Motley is one of many of Caribbean leaders who have condemned the Trump administration's actions, but there is also division, particularly due to the outsized role of the U.S. in the region. On October 18th, Motley met with leaders. Wait.
Which way to go?
I think
there it is.
Yeah, I went ahead. On October 18th, Motley met with the leaders of our Caribbean Community, or CARICOM, member nations. They released a joint statement reaffirming the need for peace dialogue and the unequivocal support for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of countries in the region. The fact that they're speaking up is highly significant. Alexander Main, the director of international policy at the Washington, D.C.-based Center for Economic and Policy Research, told Truthout. These Caribbean governments are very reliant on the U.S. in a number of ways, economically, and have been in a vulnerable position, particularly since the passage of Hurricane Melissa, in that the area where U.S. help is badly needed.
Yeah.
This week, the U.S. State Department said the United States would provide $24 million in assistance to the Bahamas, Cuba, Haiti, and Jamaica following the destruction wrought by the hurricane.
Which will come at a cost, I'm sure.
Oh.
I think it's good. Skipper?
Okay. Yeah. Cut out again. Okay, that's fine. One CARICOM country, however, did not endorse the declaration against U.S. strikes: Trinidad and Tobago. Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissonnette has openly supported U.S. President Donald Trump and his actions in the region. She says Trinidad has been impacted by drug violence, and Trump's attacks are trying to make their country safe. He is committed to fight against drug trafficking within our region. My government will continue to support the U.S. military drug interdiction exercises within the region, Persad-Bissonnette told the Trinidad Express. The island of Trinidad is just off the coast of Venezuela, only 6.8 miles at its closest point. The atmosphere in Trinidad is tense, Trinidadian journalist Sojini Gray told Truthout. We are not accustomed to these types of warlike language and these actions, he said. So, narco strikes in the Caribbean is odd, and bodies washing up on shores or citizens being killed. We had 2 of our citizens killed in, I believe, Strike 5. So that has been very disquieting. And then, when we reach out to the Prime Minister for comment, she's very evasive. Gray says schools were closed in the capital on October 31st, and grocery stores were overrun with people trying to stock up when news reports suggested that U.S. strikes on Venezuela were imminent. Gray says the Trinidadian military went on high alert and troops were called to bases across Trinidad. Wait, did I skip? Yes. While the attacks expected in those reports have yet to occur, recent actions from the U.S. besides the boat strikes have still given plenty of reason for an abundance of caution. In mid-October, Trump authorized the ICA to carry out covert action in Venezuela. He told reporters the U.S. was considering direct strikes on Venezuela. We're certainly looking at land now because we got the sea very well under control, Trump said. The United States has amassed an unprecedented number of ships and military assets in the region, reportedly the largest military buildup in the Caribbean since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. When the aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford, the largest warship ever built, arrives in the Caribbean, there'll be over a dozen ships and more than 10,000 military personnel.
Who are these people?
Oh,
hey, thanks,
you,
Jax. Appreciate
Thank you for the $15. Appreciate you. The Trump administration has labeled drug groups in the region as foreign domestic terrorist organizations in what legal experts say is an attempt to justify military action. Meanwhile, Trump has accused, again, without evidence, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro of being a narco-trafficking kingpin. He doubled the bounty of Maduro's head to $50 million in August. Maduro has denounced Trump's threat of military operations in the country and accused Washington of fabricating a war. The Venezuelan government was outspoken against the first boat attack, but since then, it hasn't exactly reacted. Ricardo Vaz, a journalist in Venezuela with Venezuelan analyst, told Truthout. I think the government is really trying to avoid any kind of falling for proclamations or unnecessary escalating the rhetoric. For good reason. Trump has shown itself to be unpredictable, and the U.S. government has hit back against Latin American leaders who have denounced its campaign in the Caribbean and the Pacific.
It's still still screwing up. It's like yours like 2 ahead. It's weird. It's all right. I think this is it, right? Hey, Bear? That one should be this one.
Yeah. No. Oh. Okay.
Yeah, I think I'll have to move it for you. It's yours. I think your thing's being weird.
Yeah, you probably have to. In late September, the Trump administration revoked the U.S. visa of Colombian President Gustavo Petro. The revocation came after Petro spoke to the protesters in New York City, encouraging U.S. soldiers to refuse orders from Trump. Last month, the United States further sanctioned Petro and his family. Trump has promised to cut off all U.S. aid to Colombia. Petro has been one of the most outspoken voices against the U.S. military actions in the region, calling the boat attacks murder. U.S. government officials have committed a murder and violated our sovereignty in territorial water, Petro posted on social media. He named one Colombian man, Alejandro Cardanza, who was killed in the U.S. attack, calling him a lifelong fisherman.
Yep.
In mid-October, Petro called on Latin American countries to unite now to reject and react beyond mere rhetoric against any aggression against the homeland of Bolivar and the Latin American and Caribbean territory. Venezuela belongs to Venezuelans. We've seen some really promising rhetoric and arguments expressed by Petro, but it's not enough. Alexandra Avina, an associate professor of Latin American history at Arizona State University and an expert on the drug war, told Truthout. Historically, the only way that Latin America has managed to stave off catastrophic U.S. intervention is to come together as a region, and we haven't seen enough of that beyond rhetoric. I think also Mexico needs to be a lot stronger, more forceful in pushing back against what the U.S. is planning to do in the Caribbean, because eventually it's going to boomerang on them, he said.
Yep.
That boomerang now seems to be in motion. On November 3rd, news outlets reported the Trump administration was drawing up blueprints to send U.S. troops to combat drug cartels in Mexico, with or without the support of the Mexican government. The United States is not going to come to Mexico with the military, President Claudia Sheinbaum had previously said in August. We cooperate, we collaborate, but there is not going to be an invasion. That is ruled out, absolutely ruled out. Sheinbaum has also denounced the U.S. boat attacks, some of which have been hitting closer to Mexico. On October 28th, U.S. forces killed 14 people in 4 alleged drug boat strikes in the Eastern Pacific, roughly 400 miles from the Mexican city of Acapulco. Sheinbaum dispatched the Mexican Navy to search for survivors. We do not agree with these attacks, she said during her regular morning press conference. We want all international treaties to be respected. But Maine says Mexico is in a difficult position. Sheinbaum has definitely expressed her strong disagreement with these extrajudicial killings in the region, sent Maine, but they're about to enter into a renegotiation of the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. They're also negotiating this security cooperation with the U.S., and doing everything they can to avoid the U.S. violating their sovereignty in a significant way. The United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement was Trump's renegotiation of the 1994 North American Free Trade Agreement. USMCA rolled out in 2020.
NAFTA,
right.
for those who know.
But the trade deal goes under review every 6 years, and analysts say Trump is likely pushing for a hefty renegotiation ahead of the July 2026 deadline. Oh, sorry, you're doing that.
Yeah.
The Cuban and Brazilian presidents have also condemned the strikes. In Brazil, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has offered to help mediate between Venezuela and the United States, even as his own country is negotiating over its own trade war with the United States.
He'll also negotiate with former head shopper Al Jelani too. So,
right,
a lot of weirdness there, as we've stated previously a couple of times. So,
after Trump slapped Brazil with a 50% tariff for bringing his ally, former President Jair Bolsonaro, to trial for plotting to carry out a coup.
Yeah, Bolsonaro.
Aside from leaders, there was popular movement across Latin America against the lethal U.S. actions in the Caribbean. People have protested in Cuba, Trinidad and Tobago, and Venezuela. But the U.S. military push into the Caribbean comes at a time when the region is far from united. Trump allies like Argentina's Javier Milei, El Salvador's Nayib Bukele, and Ecuador's Daniel Noboa have staunchly backed the U.S. lethal attacks on supposed drug boats. Bukele and Noboa have alleged ties to drug groups and narco trafficking. The problem is that, unlike the pink tide at the beginning of the 2000s, we now have a South America that is not so ideologically cohesive. Brazilian international relations professor Camille Fakes Vidal told Truthout, referencing the shift toward left-leaning governments emblematic of that era. So it will be very difficult to have a regional community to denounce this type of action. I think that, once again, we have seen throughout history, this shows that the United States is not reliable and that it acts by force for its own ends. Oh, yeah. Okay. So you said you've been watching this for a minute. So
covered it a few times.
What's your take?
Well,
so what's your
couple of things, right? You hear people like Rubio weigh in on this recently, right? Talking about the Monroe Doctrine. Not talking about it, but more talking about like, well, we got it, Iran's involved and Russia's involved, and right, like they're playing this game again, right? Because it's essentially that's how we've had. It's like sovereignty over the Americas is U.S. practically, right? And like the Monroe Doctrine is they try to keep that for like allegedly, keeping other empires out, right? And exploiting, except we're the ones exploiting. So, it's kind of, it's more about the resource management, right? We have a free excuse. And like Trump said that it's definitely like, we're willing to put that in effect, the Monroe Doctrine, So that's part of it. But yeah, I mean, it's also Venezuela's oil. Like, there's a whole lot going on there. And like, the Caribbean is just kind of caught up in the middle of it. Their people are being affected. And we're also using them as like military bases. So, as well as the resources. I think it's also an important context, like historically understanding why all these regions are important, right? When you think about the Caribbean especially, like why was it important for wars to happen there and piracy to happen there, right? Like why? It's like you have to think geographically, and like look at the resources and just region of the world they manage, Like, there's a reason why we have all these islands in the middle of the ocean, you know? Like,
right. And if you remember when we talked about the Barbados slave codes back like maybe a couple months ago, like at least historically, United States, like people think that some slaves were dropped off in the Caribbean, some to the States or whatever. Like depending on who you were and given where the need was, slaves were transported between to and from islands depending on the need.
Yep.
So it was more the idea even back then of exploitation or going where it was economically viable,
right.
for the United States, well, for the West at the time. So, and I think in a lot of ways that's playing out now still in terms of, well, we see what Trinidad Prime Minister, that why she's acting kind of cagey, because they're like a hop, skip, and a jump from Venezuela. So like, so any action that Trump takes against Venezuela will truly impact them in much more ways besides their connection to the oil with Venezuela, because they do trade with them for the oil there. So obviously they're going to get in the crossfires, which is why that explains her shadiness, as you saw in the article. But traditionally, it's traditionally now still, the United States is going to go where they're going to exploit. So
you're hearing Venezuela like kind of go back and forth with this, we are and aren't we asking Russia for help, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's because of that Monroe Doctrine shit, and like, it's also because they also recently saw how Russia acted in Syria. And Lula is sitting over there directly dealing with the Western imposed leader,
Right.
Like, recently. So, Venezuela is kind of looking at that and going like, maybe not, So, I mean, there's stuff related to it's all like trade and resource stuff. If you just get down to the bottom of it, like Russian gas is involved too. Venezuelan gas is also involved, right? A lot of stuff going on,
Right.
So, I mean, you recently saw BRICS try to they're going to have a carbon tax, exactly like the IMF does, which impacts, less expensive. Like, you can either pay the fines or you can't, right? Like, the ones who can't pay the fines then have to pay for actually dealing with the carbon. I think I saw indigenous Brazilians protesting that shit recently. Shadow, correct me if I'm wrong. But, I mean, it's hard to tell if protests are even real anymore. But without further, like, investigation. So, but the minute I see a fucking One Piece flag, you know what the fuck I'm gonna tell you, though. Tired of seeing that shit. That they get you some inflatable fucking Pikachus out there. It's meme wars, Collin. I made this thumbnail already. I did it back in I had fucking Pikachu fighting shit. Now it's real. They made my memes be dreams. No, stop it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Quit that. Knock it off. Like, anyway, anything else you wanted to add? I know we're missing a bunch. We should reach out to Camila Escalante. Is doing great reporting on this, as is Casachu News. Go check them out. Fee's doing pretty good on it as well. Nico, I think, is hitting stuff on it as well. Pretty well. So,
yes.
But yeah, anything else you wanted to add?
No.
Cool. Well,
like I said, I think we need to get people who are more well served on this topic than us to give more.
Yeah, which we
detail.
can do. We got some connects for that we can make. So,
and you guys can let us know if there's anyone, especially with this story. I mean, I don't think really even in independent media this story is talked about enough. I think especially from the Caribbean standpoint. Not Venezuela.
Yeah.
So let us know in the chat, or if you're watching this as a segment, if there's anyone you think we should talk to who can get more information to educate us on the significance of this situation, to reach out to us. So that being said, this is why we're demonetized, because we talk about stories like these that are not favorable to the algorithm or AdSense. So
just the names alone.
Right. So if you want to support us, hype up, you can scan the QR code. You can scan the QR code that you see on your screen, or you can go to the Ko-fi link you see at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're in the YouTube chat and you're live right now, you can type in !donate, all one word. The link will pop up, and you can give directly. Anything as low as $1 will gladly help us. And again, shout out to Jax for your $15 contribution. We love you and thank you. You can also give on Substack, PayPal, and Cash App. Those links are in the description below. And as we keep saying, we know that times are hard for a lot of people, especially if you're being affected directly or indirectly from the shutdown. So do not give your money if you're in a difficult situation. That being said, if you still want to support us, the best and probably the free way to do it is liking, subbing, and sharing our content. And check if you are still subbed, because sometimes YouTube does some ish and subs people randomly. So double check that. Although I don't think that, at least for us, I don't think that has happened,
right?
At least as of late. And make sure you leave a comment. That apparently also helps in the algorithm too, I guess. Help us get to 3K. We're about, I would say, about 350 away, I believe, as of now. So maybe by the end of the year we can hit 3K. And thank you for watching.
INN News.
You said when I pulled this story this week, you were like, "We're covering Venezuela again," and I'm like, "Yup, yes we are." It's
and as
the
of
next
today,
war.
It's pending.
Yep.
So as at the time of this recording,
yep,
it's looking like we're about to declare war. So it makes sense. So you were ahead of the curve slightly.
Been that way for months, So, but just general in Latin America, and we'll talk about this a bit as we continue the segment. But it's this idea of like, why should we do these foreign wars when we can do wars in our home hemisphere? It's a lot easier.
Sure.
So, but we'll get to why that we're going through that in a bit. But let's start here, right? I had a little punny moment of weapon of mass deception, because guess what, Care Bear? We're doing the same fucking playbook we used in Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan about weapons of mass destruction, but this time we're just going to make it up. Like on the front of it, we're going to call fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction, right? Where does that fentanyl come from again? I forget. Where's that at? What pharmaceutical companies decided to start making that? I mean, I'm just saying what I'm saying. It's definitely not Venezuela, that's for sure. But Dave DeCamp at Anti-War is going to do some of the coverage of this. So President Trump on Monday declared that the synthetic opioid fentanyl is a, quote, weapon of mass destruction, signaling he may use the drug as a pretext for war in Latin America. Will the New York Times put fentanyl needles on the cover and say weapon of mass destruction on it? Find out at 11. Illicit fentanyl is closer to a chemical weapon than a narcotic. An executive order signed by the president reads 2 milligrams, an almost undetectable trace amount equivalent to 10 to 15 grains of table salt, constitute a lethal dose. Hundreds of thousands of Americans have died from fentanyl overdoses. The order says that the U.S. Secretary of War and Attorney General should determine whether the threats posed by illicit fentanyl and its impact on the United States warrant the provision of resources from the Department of War. I'm so happy they changed that to what it actually is. You know? Like, it makes it a little easier, right? To the Department of Justice to aid in the enforcement of Title 18 of the United States Code, right? So we're just essentially trying to, like, pull some resources from the Department of War for this drug war nonsense, right? So it directs the Secretary of War to update all directives regarding the armed forces' response to chemical incidents in the homeland to include the threat of fentanyl. The order also calls for the Secretary of War and the Secretary of Homeland Security to identify threat networks related to fentanyl smuggling, uses WMD and non-proliferation related threat intelligence to support the full spectrum of counter-fentanyl operations. And I'm betting some like trailers in the middle of Kansas who are making it themselves are going to get droned next week. I'm sure that's what's going to happen, right? So President Trump has previously claimed that boats the U.S. military had bombed at the coasts of Venezuela were carrying fentanyl, but the synthetic opioid isn't produced in Venezuela and doesn't transit through the country on its way to the U.S. According to federal government data, the vast majority of fentanyl comes from Mexico and is smuggled through the border in cars driven by U.S. citizens.
And yet, didn't you say even last night, like, we're not going to war with Mexico?
Right.
Why is that?
Give it some time. We might. They might decide we just should have the entire hemisphere to ourselves. Who's gonna stop us? Name me one motherfucker who would stop us. Like, you could say Russia and China all you want, but they tend to be a little bit more like reserved, you know, than starting a world war. Like, even if America started grabbing more land, you know? So, pharmaceutical grade fentanyl is used in hospitals and medical centers in the U.S. as a pain reliever and an anesthetic and can end up on the street, but most cases of overdose in the U.S. are the result of illegally made fentanyl, which I'm betting is made here plenty of times. So, what do I know? But, Care Bear, I brought this for you. Trinidad and Tobago to open its airports to U.S. military as U.S. continues build up near Venezuela, right? And we've talked about Barbados being, you know, I don't even know what to call them, but, you know, they're
Trinidad.
Fucking around. Yes. Trinidad and Tobago. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
They will allow the U.S. military to use its airports in the coming weeks. According to a statement from the Caribbean Islands Nation Foreign Ministries, the U.S. continues ramping up military activity near Venezuela. Trinidad and Tobago's foreign ministry cited recent military cooperation with the U.S. in its statement, including the recent installation of a radar system in the country. In keeping with established bilateral cooperation, the ministry has granted approval for the U.S. military aircraft to transit Trinidad and Tobago Airport in the coming weeks. The United States has advised that these movements are logistical in nature, facilitating supply replenishment and routine personnel rotations. Sure, of bombs to innocent people. That's what we're replenishing, clearly. U.S. cooperation with Trinidad and Tobago has also involved intensified U.S. military drills in the country, which lies just 7 miles off the coast of Venezuela. Trinidadian Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar has strongly supported the U.S. bombing campaign against alleged drug boats in the region, which has killed citizens of her country and has caused bodies to wash up on Trinidad's coast. Amory Brown, an opposition senator and former foreign minister, strongly criticized the announcement about the U.S. military using Trinidad and Tobago's airport, saying the country has become complicit facilitators of extrajudicial killings, cross-border tension, and belligerence. There is nothing routine about this. It has nothing to do with the usual cooperation and friendly collaborators that we have enjoyed with the U.S. and all of our neighbors for decades, Brown added. according to the AP. The announcement came after a U.S. military aircraft nearly collided with a JetBlue plane that took off from the nearby Dutch Caribbean island of Curacao and was bound for New York. Anyone hear about that? Anyone?
Nope.
No? Wonder why. We almost had a midair collision up here. The pilot told air traffic control after the near miss, which occurred on Friday. They passed directly in our flight path. They don't have their transponder turned on. It's outrageous. Yeah. Like, but, you know, rules of the air. Who needs that shit, Care Bear? So I posted this on Elon's stupid app the other day, and I felt it was important to bring here as well. You know, a lot of this is getting like pinned on Trump specifically, right? You know, like you mentioned earlier at the top, to get rid of, you know, we got to cover up his Epstein files, which cover out Friday, right? You know, we allegedly, but you know, it's not just him. This has been part of the thing for a minute now. Here's Joseph R. Iscariot himself, talking about narco terrorists way back in what year, Care Bear? 1989.
Right.
To put it in very personal terms for a moment, Joe Biden, me, I would settle for a world in which I could worry about the same kinds of things that my parents worried about, in which I only had to worry about the grades my children got in school rather than the drugs they're being exposed to, in which I only had to worry about the prices my wife had to pay at the supermarket instead of fearing that she might get mugged by a junkie in the parking lot as she loads her groceries into the car, in which tonight I could call my mom just to wish her pleasant dreams, not for the purpose of making sure she's safe in her own home. That's the kind of world I want. That's the kind of world you deserve. In a nutshell, the president's plan doesn't include enough police officers to catch the violent thugs, not enough prosecutors to convict them, not enough judges to sentence them, and not enough prison cells to put them away for a long time. We disagree with the president's decision to cut back on our previous commitment to protect against drugs coming across the border, to cut the Customs Service, the Coast Guard, and the Border Patrol. We think we should do more to stem the flow of drugs across our borders, and we think we should go one step further. Let's go after the drug lords where they live.
What? Say again? What was that?
I'd like to repeat that because it sounds vaguely important.
Borders, and we think we should go one step further. Let's go after the drug lords where they live. With an international strike force. There must be no safe haven for these narco terrorists.
Narco terrorists. Got it.
They must know it. And we don't have to promise a world without worry or fear. We're not asking for that much. All we have to do together is to keep our promises and stay together. Thank you.
Fuck you. That's what I say to you. Any thoughts, Care Bear?
I mean, I'm glad you brought it, but no one gives a fuck about what Biden said, because what has happened to Biden since he was left office? Like, so everyone's going to be focused on Trump, and then it's just the idea of like Trump, like the Republicans always start war, but it's both sides,
right?
It's both sides. Like, and I'm getting tired of. I mean, we say this all the time, and I think our friend Oz said this the other day. It's like people who kind of, again, once you know the pattern, you can predict shit easily. You know, and it's like, you know, and I think when we kind of call this out, it's like people might be able to acknowledge one side, but not the other. And basically Oz was saying, you know, sometimes it feels like essentially you're talking to brick walls, because it's like, we see the shit. We understand. It's not to say you understand it, but it's like you only have to see the pattern a couple of times in order to be at least for you to figure out more than likely this is going to happen again in almost exactly the same way. And calling it out, people are just like, nah, like it's not happening that way or whatever. So,
till it does.
You know, so, but both sides are complicit in war, and you know, and I will say this because I know this has been somewhat of a trending, you know, with Jasmine Crockett, you know, kind of putting her foot in her mouth over what she said about Israel and how she has said that Israel should be, and we should be an ally to Israel. And now that people are calling her out for it, you know, like now that she's running for a higher office, now she's trying to play dumb. No, she's not trying to play dumb. Now she's trying to make us sound dumb by being like, I didn't say that. I didn't mean it in that way. You didn't.
We got you on fucking
context. I'm like,
like we got you on camera. Like,
right, bitch, we call you on camera. Like, fully, you basically, you know, slobbing the knob of Israel. And then she's like, oh, well, I don't take AIPAC money. So then you essentially promote them for free.
Yeah.
Essentially is what you're saying. Like, so you're a political hoe in that regard. Like, at least if you're going to if you're going to sell out, make it count. Like your colleagues are doing.
Yeah.
Like, you're just selling out for nothing. So that's even way worse for you. But I digress. But I digress. So, but yeah, our government is in the rapture of the military-industrial complex. There's no war, no resources that we wouldn't mind exploiting and do whatever to again have any reason to go into war for. But again,
if you were to take a guess, Care Bear, you're talking about predicting things. Where do you think a lot of this like push for this regime change war might be coming from? If you were to take a guess, there was some like foreign influence, you know?
Venezuela.
Yep. All roads lead back to where these days, you know?
Oh, God. Right.
Yep.
Right. But what's the connection though?
We'll find out, won't we? So, why Israel is pushing for regime change in Venezuela through Washington? Oh, you didn't think this related to Israel? Guess again. It fucking does. It always does somehow. So, this is from Robert Inlakesh, right? He's writing in the Palestinian Chronicle. So, not only is the pro-regime change Venezuela opposition allied with the Israeli Likud party, but toppling the government in Caracas directly serves Israel's regional agenda. Why? This is why pro-Israeli commentators are adamant that the U.S. military intervene and put American lives on the line. While parallels are going to be drawn between the buildup to the Iraq War and the Trump administration's regime change propaganda against Venezuela, like the fucking WMDs that we just talked about, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is infamous for cheerleading the U.S.'s illegal invasion of Iraq in 2003, a war which Israel refused to fight in itself, but nonetheless lobbied for and encouraged through its allied neoconservative think tanks in D.C.
So, so they basically wanted the mess, but didn't want to get their hands dirty.
Correct. Despite the White House recently releasing a new 33-page national security strategy document in which the U.S. declared it is no longer seeking to engage in nation-building wars. Bullshit. Fucking bullshit. And the days of regime change operations to export American values are over. They're over. To believe me, they're over. We totally ended that. It was bad. Everyone told me it was bad. Like, it's so fucking stupid. Like, anyway, the current administration is threatening that against Venezuela. It is additionally aiming to achieve the outcome in Gaza through its UNSC-approved Gaza ceasefire plan. The parallels to the buildup to the Iraq War couldn't be any starker. Pro-Trump conservative commentators are currently salivating at the prospect of getting their hands on what, Care Bear? Venezuelan oil. In addition to this, the false charge that Venezuela is somehow responsible for the U.S.'s fentanyl crisis has led to labeling the Venezuelan president Nicolas Maduro's government as narco-terrorist regime. Apparently, they learned the word from Biden. However, if you listen to what Trump admin officials are using as a justification for the goal of toppling Maduro, they constantly accuse Caracas of allying with Hezbollah and Hamas. Everyone is Hamas. Everybody. Everyone, Hamas is all around us in everything, all powerful and all knowing.
They must really think we're stupid. Well,
They do.
I don't think I don't think they care.
No.
Really, because again, back the Iraq War happened when I was in college, just about to graduate from college.
Right.
And social media didn't exist back then.
You had your MySpace page,
No, 2003. No, there was no MySpace.
Should be pretty close.
No.
Okay.
No.
When was MySpace made?
No.
That'd be a good question.
Chat, what? I know it was after college, but I definitely did not have MySpace when I was in college. So, but
August 1st, 2003.
Okay, well, I just graduated from college. So literally just graduated from college. So, yeah.
You missed that, huh?
Cool. No one had MySpace in 2003.
Right.
Maybe a handful of people, sure, but it wasn't
it's definitely close
hot among the masses yet. But but anyway, it's the idea of long story short, people were more reliant on mainstream media back then for information, and not so much anymore. And but I think especially since I think in our generation in particular, we went through the Iraq War and understand really that it was a lie. And I think it's again that was under Bush. So the idea now that people are going to go for this in light of Trump is I don't want to think that this administration thinks of it as dumb. It's just that they don't care.
Yeah,
they're going to do it anyway, regardless of what we say.
Right,
exactly. Yeah. That's the point. What are you going to do about it? Not a damn thing. So sit back and relax and let's watch the nuclear clouds form over Latin America.
Yeah.
That's essentially what they're saying. So, but yeah, I don't think people, the idea, come up with a better excuse, guys. Come on, Hamas, please.
So, some pro-Israeli commentators even claim that Hezbollah and Hamas could be preparing attacks on the U.S. homeland. Not only an audacious and illogical charge, but one with not a shred of evidence to back it up. Is Hamas in the room with you right now? These are also not the enemies of the U.S., but instead the enemies of Israel, making it more suspicious as to why there's such hyper-focus on this issue. For example, Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, who we've spoke about before as winning the War is Peace Prize, right? Recently spoke at a conference in Oslo and was asked to address the issues of U.S. intervention in her country. His response was to declare the country, quote, has already been invaded. We have the Iranian agents. We have terrorist groups such as Hezbollah and Hamas operating freely in accordance with the regime, Machado claimed, in order to justify the invasion of her nation. And I'm sure she also threw Russia in the next sentence, right? Like, this is all to try to, pull the string of the Monroe Doctrine, right?
Sure.
Essentially, which we talked about before. The U.S. also recently released footage of its illegal theft of a Venezuelan oil tanker, justifying this move by claiming it was used to transfer Iranian oil. It is of note that Tehran's relationship with Caracas is frequently cited as if it represents a threat to the United States. Moves like the recent tanker seizure represent a step that is an aggression toward Iran by proxy. I think Trump said this week is, we took back our oil, they stole our oil, right? That kind of nonsense. Ugh. Donald Trump, whose long desired Nobel Peace Prize was stolen away by the pro-war Venezuelan opposition leader he backs to overthrow Maduro, attempts to pride himself on the idea that he is a broker of peace and opposed to regime change wars. Yet, between March and May, he launched a failed war on Yemen, followed by directly striking Iran in June, both acts committed solely for the sake of Israel. And how'd that work out for them? What happened there? Our carriers had to turn tail and run. Isn't that what happened? We lost a couple of planes over the side, right? Isn't that what happened? Washington pro-Israel think tanks like the Foundation for Defense of Democracies are pumping out articles groveling over the prospect of controlling the nation's oil, but also ensuring that the new Venezuela, led by a U.S. puppet regime, will cut ties with Israel's enemies. Yeah, like they said would happen in Syria. What's happening there? The fucking exact opposite. Meanwhile, being a hotbed for ISIS, as we all know, the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. That's their old name, right? In the new article written by the FDD senior Iran and financial economics advisor Saeed Ghassaminejad, it spells out in a tone of certainty that a new regime in Caracas would sever ties with Iran. Tehran uses Venezuela as a base for expanding its jihadi influence in America's backyard. A U.S.-aligned Caracas would kick the Iranian agents out, making the southern border and the homeland more secure. As long as you kick the Israeli ones out, too. I'm equal opportunist when it comes to foreign meddling, so, the Atlantic Council think tank has even claimed that Lebanese Hezbollah has helped to turn Venezuela in a hub for the convergence of transnational organized crime and international terrorism.
Terror. Terrorist. Terrorism. Terror. 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 Terrorist. Terrorist. Terrorists. Terror organization. Terrorist attacks. Terror.
Yes, the ghosts of Bush's past here to haunt us again. In fact, in the same issue brief that was published back on October 7th, 2020, entitled The Maduro-Hezbollah Nexus, How Iran-Backed Networks Prop Up the Venezuelan Regime, you see the think tank uses the term narco-terrorism. The Atlantic Council blames Israel's enemies for this, allegedly setting up a narco-terrorism conspiracy that involved dissidents of the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, drug cartels in Mexico, the Islamic Republic of Iran, Syria, and the Lebanese terrorist group Hezbollah. Such an obsessive focus on the fact-free conspiracy theory, which points the finger at who's who of Israel's enemies, recently roping in Hamas, also is not by accident, nor is the Pledge of Allegiance to Israel by the Venezuelan opposition. While it is clear that Venezuela is allied with Iran and collaborates with it as a means of navigating the world under crushing U.S. sanctions, these conspiracy theories presented by pro-Israel think tanks, Israel lobby-sponsored politicians, and Israeli-aligned media outlets are about as serious as the claims that led to the Iraq War in terms of the evidence to back them up. Another motivating factor in Israel's desire to see the Venezuelan state toppled is the emergence what's now being called the Isaac Accords. This initiative was announced publicly by Argentine President Javier Milei late last month. So anyone seeing the patterns emerge here? Anybody seeing what's happening? We do some regime change. We put some electromeddling, like in Honduras recently, right? Where we completely nullify their elections and stuff ballots and try to put our people in, essentially, right? Standard banana republic diplomacy. Like failing to rope more major Arab and Muslim nations into the Trump administration's so-called Abraham Accords, the Israeli government is now setting its sights on Latin America. The Isaac Accords demonstrate an active push from Israel to expand its influence in the Western Hemisphere. Left-wing movements and governments in Latin America have historically stood with the Palestinian cause, a legacy of unified resistance to imperialism there lasts until this day. If Venezuela government is toppled, it is predicted that there will be a domino-style effect, knocking out other left-wing governments in the region, or at least the U.S. will move on to the next target. This means both Cuba and Nicaragua will be in the firing line. I mean, everything in South America is up for grabs, pretty much. In order for Tel Aviv to prove successful in its Isaac Accords missions, it needs U.S.-funded parties to win elections, and for Washington to carry out regime change operations across the region. The only country that appears immune to the strategy for now is Brazil, under its current president, Lula da Silva, who is already in bed with the Israelis. Right? Like, everywhere else, the Israelis have the perfect men in office to pursue the strategy to its bitter end. Take U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is not only the recipient of at least $1 million in Israeli lobby funds, but has a personal animus toward the Cuban leadership as a member of that nation's broadly pro-regime change diaspora. Rubio understands full well that regime change in Caracas leads to the toppling the government in Havana. While Israel is not the sole driver of the U.S. Trump administration's regime change agenda in Venezuela, it is undeniable that it is a factor and will certainly benefit from this outcome. So between that, oil reserves, just general resource reserves, like the Monroe Doctrine, Israel influence. I mean, anything else I'm missing? Like the threat of socialism on our border, you know, that kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens come this week. You know, which speaking of this week, here's Donald Trump himself. Venezuela is completely surrounded by the largest armada ever assembled in the history of South America. It will only get bigger, very huge, and the shock to them will be like nothing they have ever seen before. Until such time as they return to the United States of America all of the oil, land, and other assets that they previously stole from us. The illegitimate Maduro regime is using oil from these stolen oil fields to finance themselves. Drug terrorism, human trafficking, murder, and kidnapping were the threat of our assets and many other reasons, including terror, drug smuggling, and human trafficking. The Venezuela regime has been designated a foreign terrorist organization. Therefore, today, I am ordering a total and complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers going into and out of Venezuela. The illegal aliens and criminals that the Maduro regime has sent in the United States during the weak and inept Biden administration are being returned to Venezuela at a rapid pace. America will not allow criminals, terrorists, and other countries to rob, threaten, or harm our nation, and likewise will not allow a hostile regime to take our oil, land, or any other assets, all of which must be returned to the United States immediately. So, yeah. Just I love that big stick we're carrying around, right? Venezuela responded, right? President of the United States, Donald Trump, launched a reckless and grave threat against the Bolivian Republic of Venezuela, violating international law, which there is no such thing at this point. Free trade, that doesn't exist. And free navigation. Again, kind of hard to do when you only have one world naval power. So, He claims on his social media that Venezuela's oil, land, and mineral wealth are his property. Consequently, Venezuela must immediately hand over all its riches. The U.S. president seeks to impose an irrational naval blockade on Venezuela in order to steal the wealth that belongs to our homeland. In full exercise of the international law that protects us, our Constitution, and the laws of the Republic, Venezuela reaffirms its sovereignty over all its natural resources, as well as the right to free navigation and trade in the Caribbean Sea and the world's oceans. Consequently, Venezuela will proceed in strict adherence to international law, the UN Charter, to fully exercise its freedom, jurisdiction, and sovereignty despite these warmongering threats. Why? I mean, like, to some degree, I get that, but, like, at the other degree, fuck them. What have they done for you lately? You know? Like... Our ambassador to the UN will immediately denounce this grave violation of international law against Venezuela. We call upon the people of the U.S. and the people of the world to reject this extravagant threat by any means necessary. Once again, it reveals Donald Trump's true intention to steal the wealth of our country that gave birth to United Liberating Army of South America and our liberator, Simon Bolivar. The Venezuelan people, united in popular military and police forces, will defend their historic rights and prevail on the path to peace. Donald Trump verbatim puts forth the following interventionist and colonialist statements. Until all the oil, land, and other assets that were stolen from us are returned to the U.S., Venezuela and the people of the United States have denounced his true intention to appropriate the country's oil, land, and minerals through gigantic campaigns of lies and manipulation. Venezuela will never again be a colony of any empire or foreign power, and it will continue with its people along the path of building prosperity and defending its independence and sovereignty. The Venezuelan people remain firm in their care of their territory, wealth, and freedom. With our liberator, we say, fortunately, a handful of free men has been seen defeating powerful empires. So, closing thoughts, Care Bear?
In the words of Misty.
Yep. I could do that. Come on.
You should have had that on the ready, to be honest.
Yeah. Yay!
Great way to end the segment.
Well,
we have fun here.
We do. We try as much as we possibly can with the dystopian nightmare we live in. So talking about these things are why YouTube's demonetized us. So you can scan that QR code on your screen, go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network and leave us a few dollary dues. We appreciate it so much. But if you can't do that because you're one of the poors like ourselves, like and subscribe. Share the video. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. How fucked are we truly? But otherwise, thanks for watching.
Who are these people?
Collin, you asked, you saw on Twitter about Sam Husseini talking about impeachment, right? You asked me like...
Because with AOC and like some other people who was being like, Trump bombed illegally, and he was like, impeach the motherfucker. So
right. Yeah, like do it. Fucking
right.
Do it.
So he does have reasons. He's not just like it's not just feels and vibes from Sam Husseini. So we're gonna actually listen to his reasoning because that seems like the reasonable thing to do. I don't know about what other people would do, but that's what we do here. Anyway, this is June 18th. He writes the efficacy of principal impeachment. A left-right alliance could begin to undo the oppressive establishment and stop the perpetual war machine. So this is, I don't know if you saw this video, right? Of after they bombed the IRIB studios, that's like the Iranian like press TV affiliated thing. But yeah, Eunice Shadloo. Hopefully I got that right. But Sam Husseini went to an event Tuesday night on Iran at the progressive venue Bus Boys and Poets. Colin knows where that's at.
Well, there's several locations in DC, but yes.
Yeah. A refrain of the evening was how people were surprised that they were agreeing with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has been posting against war with Iran. That's really not.
Oh, by the way, I do want to say something about that, though.
Yes.
Because I think there were people who felt away about her stance on Iran, which I totally get, given it's Marjorie Taylor Greene, but she's right on this issue. Doesn't mean she's right on every issue.
She's or
still
most issues.
Still for Israel through and through.
And it's probably a bit of a fucking play anyway, because
I think she doesn't want to.
Well,
it's not to say she doesn't want to go against Papa Trump, but she'll say just enough to make it. But I think also she kind of knows her base, who may not necessarily want this. So I think she's kind of appealing to her base more of anything else. But don't get it twisted. Just because she's against this war doesn't mean she's anti-war.
Right.
So
I did not see what she was.
But that's really not so surprising to me. Lots of major issues lend themselves to left-right alliances, from war to civil liberties to trade to Wall Street bailouts. See my piece from 2013, the perennial, unusual, yet somehow ubiquitous left-right alliance towards acknowledging an anti-establishment center. The insight is key to my votepack.org election strategy, which, if you've seen Sam Husseini, his thing was, if you don't like either the party, either go, what was the thing in Minnesota, Michigan? The undecided, not undecided, what was it? Uncommitted or something like that?
Uncommitted, yeah.
Right, that sort of thing, or third party. So, but that kind of thing. That was his vote pack strategy. So not the worst, not the best, but another refrain of the evening was to back the war powers resolutions introduced by Republicans Rep. Thomas Massie and Tim Kaine. While such an approach might help galvanize people to push their alleged elected representatives, it has been criticized by the late Francis Boyle and by Bruce Fine as effectively prioritizing the War Powers Resolution of 1973 over the Constitution. Fane writes me today, Trump has usurped the War Powers Clause of Congress, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11, and should be immediately impeached and removed from office. So this is what Husseini is talking about, right? So, of course, impeachment has often been used for partisan purposes, says Husseini. He's not talking about that. Consider these examples. In 1991, Rep. Henry B. Gonzalez introduced an impeachment resolution charging that George H.W. Bush, in violation of his constitutional oath, was initiating war against Iraq while he has not received a declaration of war by Congress, and in contravention of the written word, the spirit, and the intent of the U.S. Constitution has declared that he will go to war regardless of the views of Congress and the American people. George H.W. Bush would later write in his memoirs about his fear of impeachment that if the Gulf War drags out, not only will I take blame, but I will probably have impeachment proceedings filed against me. This may have led Bush to limit the scope of the war and not try to oust Saddam Hussein in 1991. Right? So this is example 1, Care Bear. Right? Let's go to example 2. In 2017, Ben Rhodes. You've heard of Ben Rhodes, right? Obama's
Yep.
Deputy National Security Advisor and Foreign Policy Speechwriter.
Obama.
That guy, right?
Yeah.
So he feared impeachment if he targeted the Syrian government. You might be wondering, did he? Did he actually? Well, here's what Rhodes has to say himself. I went through an evolution on Syria. I came into this job shaped by the post-Rwanda view of liberal interventionism, whatever the fuck that means. Suspicious of some amount of U.S. military intervention, but also seized with the necessity of acting in certain situations. I was a vocal advocate of going into Libya, and in the early days of the Syrian conflict, I was an advocate for military action. And I believe that I was wrong about that. Well, I guess admitting is the first step. Everything that I have learned about watching that conflict unfold suggests to me that the president's refusal to get into a military conflict with the Assad regime was actually one of his best decisions. And I don't expect that view to be the popular view for a long time, if ever. But he tested every possible option, and at no time was there a viable military option to make things better in Syria. End quote. The interviewer Crowley asks, does that imply that his mistake in the Red Line episode was drawing the line in the first place? Rhodes replies, well, drawing the line actually did provide the basis for a diplomatic effort to remove the chemical weapons program peacefully. I don't know how we could have started a military conflict with Assad that we didn't feel compelled to try to finish by taking out Assad. Even if you do that, there's no reason to believe that people would have simply reconciled with one another because the United States was a party to the conflict. And never mind the fact that we had no international support. The only country in the world that was prepared to join us was France. And we had no domestic legal basis. We actually had Congress warning us against taking action without congressional authorization, which we interrupted as the president could face impeachment.
Interpreted.
Right. Sorry. Interpreted. But Crowley says, really, was the prospect of impeachment actually a factor in your conversations? That was a factor. Go back and read the letters from Boehner, letters from the Republican members of Congress. They laid down markers that this would not be constitutional. If we got drawn into a conflict in Syria without congressional authorization, without international authorization, without international support, you can see very clearly how that could have completely derailed this entire presidency. So, yeah. Thoughts? There's been Rhodes down there.
I mean, again, it just proves the idea of if you're a duopoly, you're pro-war. So, yeah, glad you had the change of heart, but you should have thought of that regardless, honestly. Like, it shouldn't necessarily be the thing that, oh, we have to go to war with these people or this country because of, and you can fill in the blank to the reason, but that's generally like the stance of both sides that they are willing to do. And again, just with the Democrats, even with Trump, they're not. Then it's not that they're mad that Trump is going to war. You know, we saw the leadership like with Jeffries and Schumer. Like, they're just, if anything, they're upset that because their people are not necessarily the ones initiating. So, like, again, Trump was sloppy with it. That's the thing. But both sides want to go to war. So, again, that's money.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's money. That's resources to exploit. So, you know, so it's going to work in our best interest, our meaning the West.
Yeah.
To actually, you know, start these wars, especially if we're able to claim those resources that the countries have that we want.
Yep.
And as the 34th rule of acquisition states, peace is good for business.
That's the 35th rule.
Oh, you're right. What's the 34th?
War is good for business. It's easy to get them confused.
Well, Sam Husseini, jumping back in, says it appears that fear of impeachment might actually curtail U.S. presidents from their most aggressive tendencies. Last year, as Biden bombed Yemen without authorization, many in Congress called it unconstitutional, but none moved to impeach. He talked about that here. So now it may make sense for some congressional representatives to introduce articles of impeachment against Trump. They should. Bare minimum. Bare minimum, they should. So, make clear that they are not doing so for political reasons. They should pledge to do the same for any president of either establishment party violating the war powers provision to the Constitution, which I doubt they're going to do, but sure. They could highlight that it is their duty to impeach genuinely unconstitutional acts. Congress people, particularly those who seem to take exception to the establishment at times, often act like influencers. Tweeting is not governing. They should use the legal powers they have. Indeed, they must uphold their pledge to protect the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Correct? They should ideally be one or more Democrats and one or more Republicans. This would highlight the first point, and it would be a step towards the needed realignment of politics in the U.S. envisioned by VotePact.org, so that public and members of Congress are not effectively enslaved to various parties or factions. By pairing up, they get protection. This transpartisan nature, says someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, teaming up with someone like Rashida Tlaib will be attacked, but it will be hard for the establishment to ignore. Leading warmonger Lindsey Graham commenting back in 2010, "You know what I worry about most? An unholy alliance between the right and left."
Which is, it's never going to happen.
No.
Never going to happen.
Not in that way, for sure. There is pressing need to make Graham worry. Articulating statements with legal force by a few members of Congress organizing themselves in such a transparent fashion could be a step in breaking the oppressive establishment duopoly, and especially the perpetual push towards war that it continuously manifests. So, just as a, couple of comments at the end from Husseini. So, as a political matter, removal from office could be problematic with Vance as vice president. This does not affect impeachment as an initial remedy. I mean, it might. It depends on, who's willing to. Both of them are willing to do the same thing, if not worse.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have also speculated at times that Obama didn't target the Syrian government more because they wanted Syria to be more of a failed state, let it twist in the wind so that whatever government came with Assad would be weak, and it's possible the same dynamic was at play in Iraq through the 1990s. So, yeah, it's every once in a while declare peace. We still have the, we're going to invade 7 countries, So, right. But any thoughts? Guess what? 128 Democrats cross the aisle. Here's your bipartisan left-right alliance, Sam Husseini. What do? They come across the aisle to block AOC's back bid to impeach Trump over Iran strikes. Any fucking questions?
No.
It
don't make no motherfucking sense.
Right. But you know what? It's funny because I live in DC. They're doing a march on Iran over the weekend. I actually showed the picture to Indy because I saw a flyer. They're not going to talk about this. They're going to talk about how Trump is going to war, but they're not going to say anything as far as Democrats are actually backing the war if Iran given this. That's the thing that is going to be wild. And it's not wild, it's just expected. But it's like, they're not going to mention both sides are liable for war. But it's easy to put it on Trump because, again, Trump is an idiot and Trump is more brazen. But war is business. Actually, not even. War is money. War is money for them. So they're going to do everything in their best interest for their donors. So Yeah, I just wanted to say that because, because I showed the picture to Indy. I don't think I sent it to you, but like it's the usual characters, like Code Pink is sponsoring it. Answer Coalition is also sponsoring it. I forgot the other, but those were the main two that I remember. So it's like, of course, the usual cast of characters who will say the nice things, but they're not going to do anything really robust to actually create policy change. It's just another weekend where people are like, we hate Trump for doing this, and go home. That's it.
What? Huh?
I ain't scared of you motherfuckers.
What? Collin. Okay. What? Oh, I'm completely in agreement. I'm with you, dog. Fucking dumb. And there'll be another No King's Day coming up, which, you can check out our previous, thing on how that's also bullshit. So.
Right. Yeah, we talked about that last week. So.
Yep. Shout out Indy for that one. But anyway, talking about those things is why YouTube decided we shouldn't get any money. So if you would like to say, fuck you, YouTube, and send us money anyway, you can go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network or scan that QR code on your screen. We appreciate every dollar you do. It goes to good things. But if you can't, because you're one of the poors like ourselves, just do all the engagement stuff, share the video. It's the only way it gets seen, So leave a comment, let us know what you think. Well, what do you think's on the horizon? Because we don't fucking know. Anyway, thanks for watching.
INN News.
So this story is more of a reaction, if anything else. So as you guys know, and we talked about this story last week as a featured segment. So Trump has federalized DC police. He's brought in the National Guard to essentially roam the streets. ICE agents have picked up their activity in the city. So that's what, as a DC resident, I've had to deal with now for over a week now. So a lot of you, if you follow us on Twitter, kind of know what happened to me yesterday, or what I literally walked into yesterday. But I do want to kind of give a little bit of an update in terms of how people are feeling in regards to the federalization of DC police. So we're going to watch this NBC News clip, just kind of giving a little more context for those of you who may not know, and we'll get into the meat of the segment. So go ahead, Reef, when you're ready.
I'm not ready.
Turning now to President Trump's push to stop violent crime in the district. Over the coming days, the number of National Guard troops patrolling the city will more than double after several states committed to the federal takeover of D.C. But it seems most D.C. residents are opposed to the president's actions to tackle crime. News 4's Megan McGrath has that story.
National Guard troops on the Mall, around the monuments, and in metro stations. The federal takeover of the D.C. Police Department and the order to put federal law enforcement officers on patrol. According to a new Washington Post Schar School survey, the vast majority of D.C. residents are opposed. According to the survey, 8 out of 10 Washingtonians are against the executive order to federalize law enforcement, with 7 out of 10 opposing it strongly. And 65% of residents questioned don't think the president's actions will reduce crime in the city.
The abundance of cops doesn't do anything. We don't feel any safer because there's police on the streets. We feel safer when we come together as a community and we can take on and tackle the challenges that our communities are facing together.
DC is a beautiful, vibrant city. People are scared to go out in the streets now. What makes DC unsafe is all of these police forces that are brutalizing people as they go about their day.
Do you think any of this is going to make a difference in terms of crime?
No, because you out here now. Do you see any shooting and robbery? I mean, crime gonna happen anyway.
As for what is the biggest problem facing the District of Columbia, the survey says 24% of residents cited President Trump, the takeover of the police department, or federal overreach as the biggest problem. 22% said it's crime.
I don't know. It's a little bit of a mix. I think crime is a real problem here. I was randomly assaulted on the Anacostia metro station by a guy who just swung a bottle at my face. Just definitely a problem. But again, the solutions are pretty complicated.
What he's doing is unethical, okay? He don't know the rules of law.
Desperate times call for desperate measures, so I feel like, it could be of some use, but I feel like we have enough policing.
And according to the survey, Washingtonians are generally happy about living in the city. 9 out of 10 say that their neighborhood is either an excellent or a good place to live. Megan McGrath, News 4.
I felt that last statement was a little bit of an overreach there, but so this is kind of an exclusive for you guys. So yesterday, I got home from work. I changed my clothes. I was walking to my gym, minding my own business, when I ran into what would have been a raid, an ICE raid. My guess is, so I'm not going to tell you where I live, but if those of you who know DC very well, based on the footage, you could probably guess where in the area I live in, Northwest DC, you could probably guess where I live. So what happened was, and I can't really tell from where I was walking as I was walking to the gym, but it looked like these ICE agents were trying to abduct, I guess, an employee, because I live by a Chick-fil-A and a Taco Bell. Actually, it's in the building where my gym is. So for what I could see, they were walking out of either one of those two restaurants, and then there was a huge crowd basically telling these guys to get the fuck out. So this was the footage that was able to catch. So there are 3 clips. So this is what happened just as I was heading to the gym yesterday evening. So go ahead. Not sure what that guy was doing running there, but
You need like 2 sides to the ring. 2 sides to the ring. Look at that. Baby coming through.
That's the funniest bit. Baby come through, get your fucking asses out of my way.
You look like you got all that shit off of you. You have an obligation to refuse unlawful orders.
ICE go home! ICE go home! ICE go home!
ICE go home! ICE go home! ICE go home! ICE go home! ICE go home! ICE go home! ICE go home! ICE go home! ICE go home!
ICE go home!
ICE go home! ICE go home! ICE go home! ICE go home! ICE go home! ICE go home! ICE go home! ICE go home!
So that happened. So that continued to happen. And we basically followed them down the street where they parked their vehicles. So they stood there for a while, and then I guess they figured, okay, there's not much that we can do here. So So they started walking away. So we kind of followed them,
Right.
harassing them to ensure that they would leave. So this is the next clip here.
Get the fuck out of here, man.
I can't hear.
You can't hear. That's because I was trying to be fancy.
Take it off! Take it off! Coward! You are a coward!
Who this man?
Food this man!
Go back, fascists!
You can fucking get stopped though. I know you can't leave, bro. I know you too fucking dumb to leave. You just as bad as the rest of them, bro. You do your job, do mine. Take the mask off! Take the mask off! Oh yeah, good boy, yeah, brother, yeah. Come on, get in the fucking car. Get in the fucking car.
Unmarked white man. Well,
yeah. So they did eventually drive away. I don't think you need to play the last clip because it's very short, but they eventually did drive away. But so yeah, that's
sorry.
That's okay. But yeah, that's kind of what I ran into yesterday. Now the thing is, because I should have recorded this, but I was speaking to another resident yesterday, and apparently, like ICE has been, again, not trying to tell you where I live, but ICE has been kind of swarming in my neighborhood and the neighborhoods immediately right next to me, because my neighborhoods have a large Latino population, so I'm sure that has
a
lot to do with why ICE is centralizing around my neighborhood and neighborhoods near me in particular, as well as in other areas like in downtown. So, and apparently yesterday, I think there were about 8 arrests that ICE made in my neighborhood alone, or something like that. But it's been pretty scary in a way. And I think I shared this on Twitter, the idea for me, like as a person of color, but then like as a naturalized citizen, not necessarily feeling very safe. Now, granted, I can't live life scared. I'm going to continue living my life as I should. But the fact, again, like I literally walked into this last night, just minding my own business, getting my workout, and then I literally walked into a potential ICE raid that went wrong. Thanks, shout out to
Right.
the DC residents that actually did what they needed to do and actually chased them away. But yeah, that's my reality right now. And I've spoken to a few of my friends, funny enough, who are also Latino, who live outside of DC, even in Maryland or Virginia, and they're like, we're not coming in the city at all until further notice, because they do not want to possibly get stopped by ICE, especially given the checkpoints that were once again within the vicinity of my neighborhood last week, that they do not want the possibility of getting stopped or getting in any sort of trouble with ICE or with MPD here or any police at all. So this is the reality that Trump is putting us through. But I spoke to a friend who lives in New Jersey, who used to live in DC because I did post this on my Instagram account privately, and he was like, well, I don't think he was saying me, but he was saying like basically the alternative would have been better. And I'm like, while what we're seeing now, would this have happened under the Democrats? Probably not to this degree. But there's still the idea that the Democrats have funded the police state and have funded ICE way more. Like,
it probably would have happened just slightly differently. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be as crazy as well and kind of over the top as what we're seeing now, but it was still going to happen.
It would have been covertly.
But as I was telling my friend, it's like, as I was telling my friend, ICE should not be a thing. And the fact that Democrats have not necessarily pushed towards the dismantling of ICE and have funded ICE / the police state, like, I'm not sure if they've done it any more than Republicans, but they've funded ICE for sure. So, as I keep saying, Democrats cultivate the very world that we're living in now. It's not like they are pushing against this. And I think they feel like, oh, if we push back against this, then the Republicans will say shit about us in terms of, oh, we don't care about security and all that kind of bullshit. Well, fuck yeah. But I think the idea that like this is okay is really, it's not. But again, it's just the idea of like, it just seems very sporadic to me. It seems very targeted, especially among the Latino population in particular. This seems to be like how it's affecting them. And I'm saying this as a teacher, school starts for us next week. And the idea that we're going to have a lot of families who will be terrified of walking their kids or they themselves going anywhere. I'm even hearing now within the last week, because of the federalization of the police, that restaurant patronage is down. Because no one, well, I would argue it's down anyway, because people don't necessarily have the money to afford going out to eat, but they don't want to possibly get caught up by ICE. Or if you are an employee and you happen to be a person of color, you don't want to be in a situation where this can happen to you. Like I said, this happened, I guess, outside of a Taco Bell or Chick-fil-A, depending on which building they entered in. I couldn't tell from where I was walking from. But yeah, it's nuts. And as I said, I can't say that I feel comfortable with this at all. Like, even I am kind of wondering, like, what will happen to me, because I'm alone, I live by myself, I'm a Black man. Like, if I get abducted by ICE, no one's going to necessarily know what will happen to me. So I do have some stuff that I have done to kind of protect myself, or at least have people kind of be aware of my whereabouts at all times. Like, one of my close friends, I've tagged my location on my phone to him. So like, you can kind of watch and see like where I go. But man, it's crazy out here. But as I said, this was just a random Tuesday for me.
Yep. So, and how long have you lived in DC?
8 years now.
And ain't had it like this at all before. So,
well, I'll say this. I mean, obviously, given I remember I attended the George Floyd protests 5 years ago. The thing was, everything was more concentrated around the White House downtown. So, and obviously, given Gaza protests, again, concentrated downtown, more or less. This is the first time as far as I'm aware of, living in DC, where essentially the police state has kind of swarmed into other neighborhoods. Actually, that's not true. There was definitely a police presence during George Floyd, but not like this. Not to the degree of where people are kind of living in fear and trepidation regards to the possibility of being abducted by ICE or being arrested by MPD or whatever. So yeah, this is definitely overkill, but there have been situations even among Democrats that this is kind of similar things that happen, although, as I said, not as crazy. But even our mayor, though, has weaponized the police politically, in terms of the homeless. She has, put up barriers where tent cities are, when they get complaints that she's done that. So it's on both sides. But as we said, it's just a little more, a little less, it's more sneaky with the Democrats versus the overt situation that we're seeing right now under Trump.
Right. Yep. Sounds about right. Well, we'll see what happens in DC as things move forward. It just feels like there's some other reason that's happening, It seems weird and distractionary and
clearly it's a distraction. Like we mentioned, I think it was last week, where we believe that this is partially a distraction from people not think, and I think it's worked because no one is talking about the Epstein files in the same way as they were about a few weeks ago. No one's talking about that anymore. So, I guess it worked. But again, you're right. It's distractionary. It's over the top. It's an abuse of power. But both parties benefit. Granted, if this were Democrats, it wouldn't be quite like this, but this would happen under the Democrats too. You just wouldn't hear about it as loud in the media. So, but again, this is, and going back to what some of the residents were saying in the clip, they were saying, a couple of them were kind of seemingly in favor of what's happening because, they're saying crime is getting bad and all this kind of stuff. So you got to do what you got to do. But again, crime is linked to poverty. So if you're dealing with crime with more cops, that's not the way to do it. If Republicans really wanted to deal with crime, raise the minimum wage, perhaps, get off this tariff bullshit so that people are somewhat able to afford, basic needs. Again, I'm not sure what people are going to do. We're heading into the holiday season, within the next month. There's going to be holiday products being
I was reading
on the shelves
somewhere
pretty soon.
that partially the thing about the tariffs is to cover up a shitty economy we already have. You know what I mean? like, if we put these tariffs in place, they don't really do that much to the end result, right? Like, that's just a byproduct of, like, the economy being terrible. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
sure.
It's just like we've been in a recession, and it's like you have to invent ways to actually show that it's, I don't know. It's a weird thing with that too, you know? But like, economy was fucking dog shit already, you know?
Right.
People couldn't afford anything. So
right. Yeah, but it's only going to get worse now. And I think it's going to, people are going to really feel the pinch of it within the next few months to a year. And so as I said, like I said earlier, you know, watch your coins. If you're able to buy stuff in bulk beforehand, I mentioned this probably back in the spring, do that now, because, you know, we don't know how high, and they're starting already. Like, as I said, that if Walmart is like doing dynamic pricing, which I'm hearing about, like, we're in trouble. Like, because Walmart is probably one of the cheapest places you're able to get basic things. So if that's happening at a Walmart, I don't know what's going to happen in other places as well. So, but yeah, be careful out there and watch your coins. And
speaking of coins, we might need some over here at Indie News Network, seeing as that YouTube has demonetized us as it has a while ago. But you could scan that QR code. Links are in the description for other ways to support, or, you know, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. But otherwise, you know, do all the stuff everyone else asks you to do. Like and subscribe, share videos, leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Do you think the police state's coming to your neck of the woods? But otherwise, thanks for watching.
INN News.
I brought this, and you were like, why are you talking about Tuk Tuk and Candace? I was like, well, I'm with you, but I think this is a discussion when we get into the article. You'll realize
that because you normally
I would be like, oh, fuck this, don't do that shit, don't talk about these fucking idiots.
So
for the reasons that I'm going to bring up in this segment, this is why we don't do this. And occasionally, you know, it's good to kind of discuss this. But so this is from Mondo Weiss, right? Which, if you know where Mondo Weiss is from, you can get why they're heading down this road, right? But they write, stop calling right-wing criticism of Israel anti-Zionism. Recent comments by Tuk Tuk and Candace have drawn attention to right-wing critiques of U.S. support for Israel. However, it is a serious mistake for those on the left to see this anti-Israel criticism as anti-Zionist. And, you know, just a forward, I don't agree with everything in this article, you know? So you're going to find out. But I think there is the secondary part to this article I think is important. But again, interviews between Tucker and Fuentes and between Candace Owens and Finkelstein, who I got fucking issues with right now too, Norman. You know what the fuck you're doing? Like, have brought increased attention to right-wing critiques of U.S. support for Israel. Voices across the political spectrum have taken to referring to those critiques as right-wing anti-Zionism or anti-Zionism on the right. In recent articles in The Nation, Jet Here cites the return of right-wing anti-Zionism, while Ben Lorber refers to Fuentes' politics as America First anti-Zionism. A recent conversation on the Jewish Currents podcast, On the Nose, was called Confronting the Anti-Zionist Right. Meanwhile, the ADL decries anti-Zionist language from the left and right. I'd argue that naming anti-Israel dissent on the right as anti-Zionist is a profound misnomer and a strategic error for those on the left who wish to combat Zionism as part of a broader decolonial struggle. And I think this is the bit, right?
Right.
So Zionism is a settler colonial movement aligned with U.S. imperialism and deeply imbricated from its origins from European fascism, racialism, and anti-Semitism. Anti-Zionism is a transnational, anti-imperialist, and decolonial movement that has been led intellectually and materially by the Palestinian resistance. Contemporary right-wing critiques of U.S. support for Israel, by contrast, are grounded in one of two tendencies: a particular form of hyper-nationalism, one that often refers to itself as isolationist or anti-internationalist, and two, anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, which this is where I somewhat have an issue with, like, Mondoweiss, because it depends on what they're calling a theory, you know? The former tendency generally leads its proponents to question the extent of alignment between U.S. and Israeli interests. The latter tendency may go further, weaving together denunciation of the state of Israel as such with anti-Semitic tropes like Jewish control of the media and Judeo-Bolshevism and Holocaust denial, except the whole Jewish control of the media, not even necessarily Jewish. It rounds about to that decolonial bit, right, where it's the empire that controls it. Plenty of those are Israeli, you know, like that's more the, you know, where is the capital? It's where the capital is. So, but I digress. Critically, neither tendency has anything to do with actual anti-Zionism, since both are fully compatible with underlying Western imperialist and settler colonial logics of Zionism, including ethno-nationalism, white supremacy, and Islamophobia. We might understand such right-wing politics on a spectrum for critical or of unequivocal U.S. support for Israel to, in more extreme cases, anti-Israel, but to label them anti-Zionist is a profound misnomer. One danger of this misidentification is that it reproduces, in reverse, the spurious logic that conflates anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, the resistance by pundits and politicians like Fuentes, Owens, Majory, Taylor Greene, and others to U.S. support for Israel is transparently rooted in anti-Semitism first and foremost. Fuentes, in the Carlson interview, narrates the stories of political awakening, largely in terms of having been canceled by conspiring Jews in control of the media, and Greene decried Jewish space lasers years before she began to push back on funding for the U.S.-Israeli genocide in Gaza. Now, pause. Because the whole Jewish space laser, you've heard people like me make jokes of, right? But it's not to say that we don't have fucking lasers. Like, we've been, that's all proven. Like, this is the best bits of this, is that this is easily dismissed as conspiracy, even though there's, like, actual documentation of the military using these, like, abilities that they may have. It's like weather control. We definitely know how to do that. To say we're doing that then turns into a conspiracy. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, you know, and it's the Jewish part that they have an issue with, which I understand why Mondoweiss would feel that way. Because it's Mondoweiss. You know? Like, you know, try not to take things personally, guys. You know? To describe these actors' criticism of U.S. support for Israel as anti-Zionist, despite their broad alignment with the fundamental principles of Zionism and their firm grounding in anti-Semitism, performs the same conflation of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. In reverse, that Palestinians and the anti-Zionist left broadly have carefully and forcefully debunked for decades. In other words, it's just as problematic to encounter anti-Semitism and call it anti-Zionism as it is to see anti-Zionism and call it anti-Semitism. Again, at this point, I feel like that's a bit, like, nitpicky, you know? But additionally, framing the right-wing critique of Israel as anti-Zionist adds complexity to what should otherwise be a relatively straightforward task, that of distinguishing our decolonial liberatory politics from a reactionary, hyper-nationalist, fascistic, anti-Semitic, and otherwise repugnant one. Even for folks on the left who are quick to decry any suggestion of selective collaboration with the anti-Israel right, the framing of right-wing anti-Zionism can lend itself to overstating the areas of overlap in our politics. In the aforementioned episode On the Nose, for example, participants recounted their alarm at the experience of finding points of agreement with Carlson and Fuentes, which were then interrupted by moments of blatant anti-Semitism. There were times in listening to it, one participant recounts, where I felt like, oh, you know, I'm like behind this car and I'm like, I know this road. And then suddenly it's like one wheel is off in the ditch. Certainly, there is a danger, which the On the Nose episode participants identify in the classic fascist strategy of appropriating certain terms from the left to redirect popular resentment away from liberatory struggle. And I think that's the bit that I'm getting to, right? Where, you know, a lot of these people, and this isn't just on the right either. This is also on the moderate liberal wing, you know, like that they appropriate certain bare minimum positions. And I don't know how many times I gotta fucking tell people that bare minimum positions are not worth praise. They're not. Like, that 10% you may align with them on, where, you know, you get told, hey, we got to work with these people when it's like, yeah, they can work with us when we're actively pushing for this information. But such appropriations and other rhetorical overlaps are generally relatively superficial when placed in the context of the exploited decolonial, anti-imperialist, and transnational principles of anti-Zionist politics. So while the podcast participants took care to parse out areas of a divergence with the right-wing commentators under discussion, my concern is that their use of the term right-wing anti-Zionism complicates the task by inadvertently reinscribing a narrative of overlap or even suggesting a horseshoe effect, which we know is nonsense. So, with that said, there's a troubling alignment that must be named between right-wing and center-left liberal critique of U.S. support for Israel, as distinct from leftist, decolonial, and anti-Zionist critique. Specifically, both camps, right and center-left, rely on the misguided premise that the support is contrary to U.S. national interest and is driven primarily by the outsized influence of the Israel lobby. In fact, as Maj Ald and Heb Jamal and others have shown, the U.S.-Israel special relationship is driven by a profound alignment of interest between the two partners in imperialism and settler colonialism and
capitalism.
Like,
thank you. Yep.
Like, it's not that crazy of a premise, you know? Not by the machinations of special interest groups that bends U.S. politics to its will. Likewise, both Democrats and right-wing pundits routinely claim that certain egregious genocidal acts of Israel are contrary to U.S. values or interests, rather than acknowledge that genocidal settler colonial violence is at the heart of the American project. And I think this is the whole big bit that I've been getting to, right? So, you know, this goes both ways for all these pundits and the people that, you know, have allegedly changed and saw the light, and they're, you know, they support Palestine, and we got to be all in with anyone who, you know, supports it. And it's like they take these superficial, bare minimum takes that aren't going to get them in trouble. If anything, they benefit them and they get pushed in the algorithm. Like, it's like they see where the wind blows and they head that direction. So,
that was the end. That was the article.
Pretty much.
Okay.
There's a couple of more. You know, they talk about colonization of Turtle Island, right? And how these people essentially won't, like, they're never going to critique the actual underlying problems, right? You know, and this goes for the left-wing ones too. They don't want to call out the actual capitalistic problems here. And the same goes with, like, Russia and China right now. A lot of people who support both those countries aren't willing to look at those countries as a country and realize that they're positioning for best advantage and trying to put their financial foot forward. You know?
Right. And this is why someone like Margie, and I'm thinking of Margie Taylor Greene because she's gotten a lot of press lately.
Massey, like, all those guys, especially the politicians.
Right. But they could say the right thing in terms of Gaza. But again, bring in the universality to it. Like, so if it were Candace, okay, great. You care about Gaza children. How about Black children?
Right.
In this country? How about all children in this country? Like, I remember a few years ago, she was saying shit about George Floyd. Now, granted, like, you know, everyone was like, oh, he had a drug overdose, whatever you want to say about that, he had no right to die in the way he did.
Nope.
Like, so I think most of us who have a heart can acknowledge that. Did Candace acknowledge like the idea of police brutality is a thing in the Black community in particular, and how that needs to be essentially eliminated? No. Has Marjorie Taylor Greene ever talked about the idea of war in general, especially with how imperialism is at the heart, as you described to from the article, like the heart of the issues of why even now we're about to head into war with Venezuela now? No.
Yeah.
It's like you take, and I don't want to say this Israel in and of itself is a cookie cut. Well, it can become cookie cutter in terms of like specific issues, in terms of like, okay, yeah, think of the children and the carnage
Right.
and all that kind of stuff. Sure. Like you can feel sorry for that. But get to the nitty gritty. Like, what's the cause behind all of that? What is the heart behind all of that?
Yeah. Yeah, the
It's
bumper
imperialism.
sticker sloganized ideals are not like
Right.
enough. You know?
Right. And like Tucker, Candace, Nick,
Who
all
had
these guys.
a fucking gigantic history of fucking propaganda. Like, straight up. Like, we remember. Pepperidge Farm fucking remembers. Apparently no one else does. So
Right. And and the thing is, you don't see, as you said, we don't see this just on the right. We see this on the left as well. If anything, they're worse on the left. Now I say left, not like us,
right.
but like, the shit lips, the true the liberals. It's funny that the idea of calling them liberal, they're like, oh my God, I'm not. Yes, you are. Like, you are very much a liberal that Malcolm X described you to be. Own your role. But they do the same thing. Like, it's very easy for them to talk about Gaza and like the children and all this kind of stuff. And, and they might at minimum have a tepid response in terms of, I mean, I've mentioned this on the show probably within the last few weeks. Like, they talk about how like Democrats are bad at this issue, blah, 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 blah. But when it comes time, voting season, it's like, we have to vote for these people, even though we don't like them, because the other side is way worse and they'll do a hell of a lot worse. What happened to like all this shit you were talking about, all these politicians in terms of Israel, Gaza, like corruption, all that kind of stuff? You don't think that still applies? And yet we still have to vote for them? So, so you see this shit on both sides. So I think really one of the things I think in the article that not to say I disagree with, but I think could have elaborated on a little bit more, is this is not an exclusive thing on the right. This very much happens on the left as well.
Yeah,
so,
which they were far more focused on the anti-Semitism, which, I get why Mondo Weiss is doing that. Like,
it's just a lot more obvious on the right, and it's easy to pick on the right.
Yeah.
When it's blatant, but
it's
not
just
so much when it's
like, I brought it to mainly have our audience go, okay, they're not talking about the underlying issues of anything. It's all superficial, surface level stuff, and if the system works for these people, they don't complain about it. Like, they'll complain about everything else, but not the system. And that to me is the big, like,
why would they have to? Because they benefit from it. They're rich.
Yep. And a bunch of these clubbers.
Like, we need to don't forget, Marjorie Taylor Greene came into Congress a rich woman already, and now she's going to probably be even richer now. So sorry, like, yeah, she might have some right takes, and I think she definitely feels slanted now because I guess she wanted to be senator, and Trump was like, no, so she felt away. So I don't feel sorry for her, because she could very much run for president. Maybe not necessarily now, but she has the potential to, or at least go into media and will continue to yap her mouth.
Media would be the best spot for her, which is where she's headed, I'm sure. I'm betting media is the option. Because, like, why fuck with politics when you just got out again? you know?
Right.
But
But again, it's like, as you said, to give people, anyone, like, and I think really at the end of the day, it's a matter of what are your principles? What is your North Star? And what are the things that you are non-negotiable on? Like, what are the things that are unshaken? Now, I get the idea of compromise, sure. But my thing is, you should only compromise when you know what the goal is, with the idea that you're going to hit that goal eventually. You don't do the compromise first step and set your bar lower to where the compromise of the compromise is an option. Like, so, and I hear that all the time, especially from a lot of my friends. It's like, oh, we have to compromise on certain shit. I'm like, no, we don't. Like, because that's where you set yourself up for this Reformation incremental bullshit that doesn't do people much, or it's means tested as hell that only offers it to certain people, while the rest of the population gets screwed over in the process. So, and we're not, and like, I can do like incremental if things are decent as is and improves to get better, not to kind of go worse.
We've talked about like unions being reformist in nature before, where it's like reform in and of itself is not the bad thing. It's when you need far more than reform, that putting our focus into it. Like, even in like a co-op or whatever, like the ideal version of that, you still need a union that is wanting like progress, and reform, because you're going to need that. You need that, and you need it quickly, in fact.
Right.
Like, you need that process fast-tracked.
Right.
Like,
reform, just to clarify, reform is good if you know what the main goal is.
Yeah.
Like, and if there's active steps to get there, then fine. But it's the idea of like having the reform be the solution to the problem, which is really, I see this more on the Democrat side, that I have a problem with.
Yeah. Don't shake things up too much. The money holders got to figure out ways around your bullshit. That's what they need. They need time. And it's just kick the can down the road for enough. But yeah, that's why I brought the article, just to kind of give people a refresher of like what to look out for, and stop fucking rehabilitating these fucking people who have already been exposed 1,000 ways already. That would be great. If we could do that, that'd be fantastic. So, but anyway, talking about things like this is probably why YouTube's demonetized us. So you could scan that QR code on your screen, go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, or links to donate are in the description below. We appreciate all the dollary dues that you could spare. But if you can do that, like and subscribe, share this with your friends, and leave a comment. Am I crazy? Let me know what you think. Otherwise, thanks for watching.
There's a difference between peace and liberation, is there not? You can have injustice and have peace. Isn't that correct? Peace and be enslaved.
Yes?
So peace isn't the answer.
No.
Liberation is the answer.